My legal cases covered the entire spectrum of the law as then practiced. Up to half my cases were debt cases, normally routine and mundane matters. Next in number came title disputes and other real estate cases. Then there were the cases involving inheritance, slander, and negligence and malpractice. There were a lot of slander cases in those days. Gentlemen were always feeling themselves offended by something some other fellow did or said. I once represented my friend Ashel Gridley when he was accused of slander by a fellow named Flagg. Gridley was a fellow lawyer turned successful businessman in Bloomington. He was disliked by many due to his great wealth and abrasive personality. In the trial, I acknowledged that Gridley had said the pejorative words in question about Flagg, but these should not be considered slander because, well, Gridley said such things about everybody. In order to represent my client well, I needed to know and believe that justice was on our side. In fact, I generally tried to avoid cases, consistent with the rules of the profession, of course, when I could not see the justice of them. If I felt that a potential client's case was weak or not based on justice, I would induce him, if he were fair-minded, to give it up. I should now like to tell you about some of my most important or most interesting cases. The first is McCormick versus Manny. You probably know that the McCormick company manufactured reapers. They also at times brought suit against other reaper manufacturers for patent infringement. In 1855, McCormick sued the J.H. Manny Company of Rockford. This was probably motivated, at least in part, by Manny's reaper having beaten McCormick's at the Great Paris Exposition earlier that same year. McCormick could afford to hire the best lawyers, and these, of course, were Eastern lawyers. In this case, they hired George Harding, assisted by Peter Watson. The case was set to be held in Chicago, however, and Harding thought it might help to have a third-rate prairie lawyer to add some local flavor. Watson came out to Springfield and interviewed me here, and although he wasn't terribly impressed, they decided I would do, but only for my technical expertise. They made it clear that I would not be called upon to present the oral arguments. But then the case was moved from Chicago to Cincinnati, negating, in their eyes, the necessity of an Illinois lawyer, and so they decided to replace me with another lawyer they already knew well. They neglected to inform me of this, however, and so I made the trip to Cincinnati, where my replacement made it clear that I was not needed. As I recall, he turned to the others and said, "What's this damned long-armed ape doing here?" I had gone to a fair bit of expense and trouble to make the trip, so I decided to stay on and observe the case, to see if I might learn a thing or two from these Eastern lawyers. What is most interesting about this case is not the case itself, but what happened several years later when I became president. I had lots of offices to fill and wanted the best man for each position. One of these positions was Commissioner of Patents, that is, the head of the patent office. I thought the best man for that job would be George Harding, the lead lawyer in that reaper case, and offered it to him. He turned me down as it would have meant a large reduction in pay. The next year, when I decided to replace my Secretary of War, I thought the best person for that job would be that lawyer whom they got to replace me, the one who referred to me as a damned long-armed ape, Edwin Stanton. I could overlook a little personal insult for the sake of the nation now, couldn't I? Oh, and Stanton brought along a fellow whom he wanted as Assistant Secretary of War. That would be Peter Watson, that other Eastern lawyer. The next case is one which came to be known as the Almanac Trial. It involved William Armstrong, son of my friends Jack and Hannah Armstrong from my New Salem days. William was better known by his nickname Duff. In late August 1857, a religious camp meeting was held in Mason County. As was the custom of the time, the young men of the town gathered at a site not far away and engaged in drinking, racing horses, and other such activities. Duff was there with his friends, James Metzger and James Norris. Late in the evening, a fight broke out among said friends, during the course of which Norris hit Metzger in the back of the head with a neck yoke, and Duff hit him in the face, in or near the right eye, with a slung shot, a leather bag of lead ball with a string attached. Duff and Norris put Metzger up on his horse to ride home. Metzger fell off, and they put him up again, but he fell off again. Metzger finally made it home, but died 3 days later from his injuries. Both Norris and Armstrong were arrested. Norris's case went to trial first, and he was convicted of manslaughter and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. It was then that Hannah, Duff's mother, wrote to me to ask if I would take Duff's case. The prosecution's main witness, a man named Allen, testified that he had seen the whole fight and that although he was 50 yards away, he could see clearly because there was a bright moon high in the sky. He had seen Norris hit Metzger from behind, and he had seen Armstrong strike Metzger with the slung shot. I knew that this would be his testimony because I had read the transcript of Norris's trial. I had him repeat his story more than once, in particular the part about the moon, to make sure we understood all the facts. I then entered into testimony an almanac, which showed that while the moon had started up high in the sky at the beginning of the evening, by the time of the fight, it was low in the sky. Thus, I discredited the testimony of their star witness. During my 4 years and 1 month as president, I nominated 5 judges to the U.S. Supreme Court, including 1 Chief Justice. You may not know that the Senate has to approve these nominations. It's a routine sort of thing, something you might not even hear about in the news media. All 5 of my nominees were approved by the Senate within 1 week. I mean, there's no need for drama, for meticulous background investigations, or rancorous and divisive hearings, or grandstanding politicians, or endless media coverage. I trust that this little talk on the subject of the law has been of interest to you. You have heard about my preparation for my law career, mostly through self-study, and my general approach as a lawyer to legal matters, how fairness and justice were my primary concerns. You've also heard about some of my most important or interesting cases, involving everything from reapers and railroad bridges to almanacs and chicken bones. I've shared with you some of my advice to actual and prospective lawyers, and also about how the law and legal matters were critically important during my presidency on issues such as secession, emancipation, and the Supreme Court. I should like to conclude by repeating some advice I read earlier, given to an aspiring lawyer, but which I believe is applicable to almost any person in any endeavor. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other one thing.